Hi, I'm Dr. Sandi Queen with Queen Homeschool Supplies, and today I'm going to finish up with the last video in my series on homeschooling through difficult times. This is all found in my book, Homeschooling Through Adversity, which you can find at queenhomeschool.com under the Parent Resources section. And I've been sharing, if you've been following these videos, I've been sharing about my youngest son Jeremiah's cancer diagnosis and just that trial that my family went through when Jeremiah was 3 years old. He's now 18 years old and healthy, cancer-free for many years. Those of you who are messaging me to ask how he's doing wonderfully. So thankful for that. But I've been talking about the different points in my book, and one of them that we often deal with when we're going through a trial of any type is, in the first video I talked about dealing with that loss of control of the situation, and that's something that you'll definitely want to watch is the first video in the Homeschooling Through Difficult Times series here. The second is dealing with delegation. The third video is dealing with asking the Lord to give you a distraction from the crisis. The next one that I did yesterday was on looking for the blessings that come in spite of the trial that you're facing. And today I want to talk to you about something that's even more challenging than that. And that would be looking for the blessings that come because of the trial that you're facing. Okay, so I'm going to use, of course, my family's journey through childhood cancer as an example of how you can do that. And for me, having my life just thrown into turmoil so suddenly, all of us in my household, it was very challenging. There we were at the beginning of our traveling and speaking convention tour, and suddenly we're yanked out, stuck in the hospital for weeks at a time, and having our child diagnosed with cancer, not responding to treatment. You can read all about that story in this book that we also published called Through the Valley of the Shadow of Death. And there's Jeremiah at 3 years old after he had lost his hair on chemo. This is also available at queenhomeschool.com under the Parent Resources section. Very thick book full of color pictures and all that. But anyhow, that's not what I want to talk about. I want to talk about how to look for the blessings that come because of what you're facing, which is a lot harder than looking for the blessings that come in spite of what you're facing, which is what I talked about in yesterday's video. But it's even more rewarding. And for me, this was quite a stretch to have to look for things that were blessings that came because my 3-year-old was diagnosed with cancer. But the first, and again, I wrote these down just like I wrote down the ones that I talked about in yesterday's video. But the first one for me was just having the gospel. Okay, I was in the children's hospital ward, and I was armed, as I always am, with a bunch of gospel tracts. And so, I would hand those out to people occasionally to share how to get saved, how to go to heaven. And there I was with a whole bunch of those because I just always carry them around. And we were in the children's hospital ward for weeks. And what a harvest field, let me tell you. The parents there were so open. They're all facing death of their child. And of course, they want to know, if there's a heaven, I want to make sure my child is going to end up there if they don't make it through treatment. So I was so thankful. That was something that would have never happened if we had not been there, that I would be able to share the gospel with so many of these parents who were grieving the loss of their own child's health and possibly of their life, So that was definitely the number one thing that went on my list there. Another was the blessing to see my family pull together like never before. And I talked about this a little bit in, I think it was the first video in this series, about how as we were out on the road, this was the first convention that we went to where my oldest daughter, Kylie, who had just turned 18, was home by herself running everything, because my kids all grew up traveling with Queen Homeschool Supplies. They all grew up in a car seat, traveling around the country, going to homeschool conventions, selling our books, that kind of stuff. And so this was the first time she was home alone, and she suddenly became stuck there alone for 3 weeks. and she pulled her weight, and she ran Queen Homeschool Supplies during the busiest season by herself, well, at home, in the home office. And my husband, as my husband is the driver normally and the one who unloads and loads the stock, and I'm the one who writes the books and does all the speaking and talks to the customers and helps them find what they need. And my kids would help with that part too, because I homeschooled them using the books so they knew how to use them. But Dad was off at work and wasn't really involved with that end of things. And so there he was, suddenly being the only adult at the booth who had to explain these books that his wife and kids had been using for years. And he learned to do that. And my kids stepped up and really put forth the effort to do that, because I wasn't there. And so, seeing my family pull together and work together, we've always done that. We've always all run the business together, especially when my kids were younger, before some of them were married now. But, at this time in our lives, everybody really pulled together, and there was no grumbling. And the same thing happened at home. The chores, the dinners that needed to be made, they were done without grumbling. And that was such a blessing. Everybody knew that these were things that needed to be done, and things that I would normally do or get on the kids to do if it was on their list. And you heard about those in my second video in this series on delegation. But, just to see everybody pull together without any complaining and just get it done. And it was such a blessing. And I did write that on the list of blessings that came because of what we were facing. Because, realistically, that's just not how it always is. Our kids don't wake up and automatically say, let me see what chores are on my list to do today, and let me do them all without any complaint, right? Every single day. And let me make dinner for the family and wash the dishes afterwards, and I'm going to just do that, without any prompting, without any complaining. At least that's not how it was ever here until this time in our lives. And so that was definitely a blessing that came because of what we were facing. So I want to encourage you to look for those things that they're blessings, and they probably would never have happened if you had not been going through this trial, because they're out there. So look for them. I encourage you. And join me tomorrow for a totally different subject, a totally different video, and I'll talk to you then.